right, we should be live and we are live right now. Hello, everybody out there. We are a little bit early, but we're getting ready to get started in a few moments. Thank you for joining the Cobb Community Alliance. We'll tell a little bit about our great guests, our candidates that are with us tonight, and also a little bit about our moderator in about 1 moment. So bear with us as we give a few moments for everyone to join in. We're showing on our clocks here as 3 minutes too. So we're gonna wait those 3 minutes and allow everyone to join in and not miss this great conversation that we have scheduled for tonight. We'll point your attention as we prepare for everyone else to join us, that if you go to facebook.com/Cobb Community Alliance, there is a sign up genius there for you to sign up and give us information if you want to volunteer. Because we have so many organizations that I'll share with you connected with the Alliance, we get a lot of invitations for opportunities for folks to volunteer for activities to engage more folks to vote this voting season. So please feel free to click on that at any given time. Leave us your information. That information will go specifically to the Cobb Community Alliance, and we'll share that appropriately with organizations that are interested in volunteers in what you indicate in your sign up. So this is that smiling moment where we challenge the candidates and the moderator, as well as myself, to see who could smile the longest. They become tired of me by the end of this because I do a couple minutes early, but give it one more moment and we will jump into the official start of this candidate forum tonight. Again, we thank you for joining us. All right, as my clock winds down and I see more folks joining in, I'm excited because that means more folks will get to hear what great things are happening in Cobb County. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. And Lori, I'm going to ask you to check one thing for me before I start talking, just to make sure people are seeing what I think they're seeing. Are they seeing the PowerPoint screen that I had up?
Yes. Are you talking about the Cobb County candidate forum?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'll start my conversation from there.
Okay.
First of all, thank you, everybody, for those of you that joined us early and those that are just joining in. It's right now at the top of the hour, and we want to go ahead and share some great information with you. Don't want to waste a moment because we got a lot to talk about tonight, because we have two folks that are already powerful in Cobb County, but both vying for the seat that controls the Cobb County Commission. First, I'd like to start off telling you a little bit about the Cobb County Candidate Forum, or the Cobb County, the Cobb Community Alliance. My name is Leroy Carson, and I'm the president and founder of the Cobb Community Alliance. The Alliance was formed last year in August, and is currently comprised of 17 African-American organizations. The organizations comprise fraternities, sororities, the Masonic community, the HBCU Alumni Alliance community, the civil rights community, the civic community, and the faith-based community in Cobb County. We have the pleasure tonight of being moderated and hosted by the president of the largest African-American organization in Cobb County, Miss Lori Reed, who is the president of the Marietta Roswell Alumni Chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta. As I mentioned earlier, just a moment ago, and I didn't stop phones from ringing, so my apologies for those of you that hear that it's busy at the Carson household, is that tonight we'll be talking to Lisa Cupid, who currently holds District 4 and is vying for the Cobb County Commissioner Chair, and Mike Boyce, who is currently the chair of the Cobb County Commission. Because all of our organizations are Christian-based, we start off these sessions with a prayer. So if you'd allow me a moment and bow your head, I'd like to just start us off with a good prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, first of all, we thank you for the opportunity to gather tonight. We thank you for the opportunity to explore the great things that could happen in our county. We pray that you lay favor and grace to the plans and purposes of both these candidates. We pray for their families, for the sacrifices that they make and plan to make on behalf of the county and its constituents. We pray for all the organizations represented here, all 17 organizations, every member, every affiliation with those organizations. We just pray that you continue to give them grace, continue to bless them, and continue to lift up their initiatives. Now, as we move forward in this session tonight, we pray that you, again, grace us with your presence through the Holy Spirit. Bless our moderator and allow the questions that flow through her mouth to be those that will inform all the constituents of Cobb County so that we are able to understand better what the visions are of both Lisa Cupid and Mike Boyce as they plan for the future of Cobb County. We say this in all prayers in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and I'll say amen.
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 Now, with that, there is a point where I keep quiet and others talk, so we're at that point. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lori to tell you a little bit about Delta Sigma Theta and her chapter, and then introduce the candidates. So I'm going to disappear, if that's okay with everybody.
Okay. Good evening, and thanks, Leroy, for that warm introduction. As stated, I'm Lori Reed, president of the Marietta Roswell Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Our chapter, over 800 college-educated women, has been a part of the fabric of Cobb County for almost 35 years, providing service through platforms such as our annual scholarships for young women headed to college, hosting youth programs for girls aged 8 to 18, conducting economic seminars, and we also partner with over 20 organizations and schools annually, providing needed items such as clothing and food. For Delta Sigma Theta as a national organization, since its founding, has been a social-driven organization. Over 100 years ago, our founders were among the thousands of women marching for voting rights. Social action for Delta Sigma Theta is intentional. It is intentional. We believe not only in the right to vote your choice, but also an educated voter. So we're going to get this discussion started with opening statements and introductions. We ask our candidates to please stay within 3-minute time frame if possible. And Ms. Cupid, we're going to start with ladies first. So we're going to start with you for an opening statement. Thank you.
Yes, first, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And thank you to all of you for tuning in today. I am honored and humbled to have served on the Cobb County Board of Commissioners over the past 8 years. I have the experience and heart for all in Cobb to help move our county forward in a way that doesn't leave communities and citizens behind. My diverse professional background as an engineer, a policy analyst, and attorney, along with being a mom, a wife, a daughter of immigrants, and community advocate, helped make me analytical, yes, but pragmatic and thoughtful about how our policies and practices impact all here in Cobb, not only now, but into the future. While I've helped to bring District 4 into the fabric of how all of Cobb prospers, to me, I have emphasized community education and engagement First, to make sure that we have the human infrastructure in place to carry on the success of Cobb, regardless of who's leading in the seat. This has not just resulted in us implementing policies and programs to create partnerships with the county and our citizens and our stakeholders of diverse backgrounds and interests, where we can work together and solve challenges, but it's resulted in people seeing themselves as being part of the process and part of the prosperity in Cobb. I believe it's this kind of approach that helps to bring our county together, particularly in the midst of challenges that you see being played out nationally, that it's our board that helps to unify and bring our communities together. And I'm the person to do that here in leadership in Cobb.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Mr. Boyce, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, and thank you, Lori, for introducing me, and also for Leroy for hosting this forum tonight. Before I get started with my comments, I want to thank Delta Sigma Theta for all the community involvement here in the last 35 years, but particularly this year with the record restriction program we did at Deputy Center, fortunately before the pandemic. And that was a really incredible day for so many people in the county, and it's reflective of the kind of servitude that your sorority has. As you know, I am Mike Boyce. I've been the chairman for the last 3.5 years. I'm not a native of Georgia. My wife is. That's how I got here. As I tell people that when I retired from the Marine Corps, she gave me 3 options: Marietta, Marietta, or Marietta. And being a true conservative, I took the middle one. So I've been here for 20 years. And I never had any intention when I retired from the Marine Corps of ever running for a political office. But as we all know, 4 years ago, I was really, really struck by the fact that we were allowed as a county to vote on a parks bond for $40 million, but somehow the people on the board didn't find it appropriate that we'd be able to vote on a bond for $350 million. So I got together a few Marines, matter of fact, 5 of us, and we did what was unthinkable, set off in a quixotic vision of running for chairman against a well-established chairman who was well established in the community here, and we won very convincingly in a runoff in 2016. In my 4 years, I have worked very hard to emphasize that the county's mission is, and I subscribe to it wholeheartedly, is that I want to keep county a place where we can all safely work, live, play, and pursue our dreams. And through some very both political and social and business challenges, I think I found a way to get this board to work together to move forward. Sometimes it moves forward smoothly, sometimes it moves forward in lurches. But the bottom line here is that we find a way to find common ground to move forward, to keep this county moving forward. Because the reality is that we depend on people working to fund the lifestyle that we have here in the county. But it has to be a lifestyle that's open to everybody. And I have a background, as you well know, of diversity. I've lived overseas almost 24 years of my life, both in Asia and in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East. And so I understand what diversity is about. I've been in places where I've seen what the vote means to people. I've seen how hard that they have been introduced to a new lifestyle where it involves electing their officials, the challenge to go with that. So I bring something to the county that most people before me have not seen, because I am not a politician. I truly came out of nowhere, but I brought a background both that allows me to work with the board, to allow me to address issues both with regard to moving the county forward, but also looking at things from a different perspective, because I haven't been part of the system. I've been something looking from the outside in, and I'm on the inside having to look out and trying to engage people in a way that makes them part of this society that we call Cobb, and this family we call Cobb. So I want to thank you for inviting me today, and I look forward to the questions from you and from the audience today.
Thank you so much. And I think I'm going to take just a moderator privilege both to just thank you both for your service that you've given to Cobb thus far. It is certainly appreciated by everyone, I'm sure, on listening with it. With that, let's start with the questions. We have a discussion, not a debate. So we are going to start. And the first question is, and I'm going to let you kick this one off, Ms. Cupid. Let's see. Describe your leadership style and ability to work with 4 other commissioners, other essential officials, staff, and community?
Yes. Well, being the only Democrat on the board, I will share that there's nothing I can get done without partnership. It takes 3 out of 5 to pass policy. And so by the inherent nature of my position, I have to partner with others. But I've learned in dealing with the board, and not only just being of a particular political background, but living in a community that is unique to other areas in Cobb. Southwest Cobb doesn't necessarily share the same character of prosperity that the other areas have. So in moving policy forward, it's incumbent upon me to be able to understand the interest of other commissioners and to be able to share the exigence as to why the unique matters of District 4 should be considered. But I recognize that that has not only been a cakewalk, but there have been some real challenges to sometimes implementing policy on my own, which is why it's been very important for me to not only try to partner with commissioners where I can, but also to partner with the community and partner with business leaders and partner with others that have close relationships with other commissioners. So when I bring matters to the board, that they perceive it as being part of a larger interest than just Commissioner Cupid, and that there's others who are backing it and who also have an interest. So for me, partnership is extremely important. If there's a matter that's of significance to me, even most recently with a nonprofit matter, I've shared it with commissioners. I don't just put matters on the agenda or throw things out there expecting them to stick. Sometimes what my approach may need to be is to give other commissioners an opportunity to think through and ask questions and give the community the ability to do so. So I'd like to think when I move something forward, again, it's not just me speaking for me, but I'm speaking on behalf of others and trying to move the county forward in collaboration.
Thank you so much. Mr. Boyce, describe your leadership style and ability to work with 4 other commissioners, other essential officials, staff, and community.
Yeah, that's a great question. As you know, I came out of the military environment where we had a very structured hierarchy, and I had to learn to live and work in the political world where, you know, you have to, sometimes it's a lot more difficult to arrive at a decision because of the fact that we don't have uniformity in the county. We have 4 different districts, but even within those districts, there's diversity of thought, of background, of culture. So we have to find a way to make, to be inclusive and at least get a conversation going. So here's what I've been trying to do during my time. First of all, I believe that the commissioners were not given enough opportunity before I came on the board to be part of the budget process. And why is that important? Because the budget is a reflection of where we're trying to go in the future. The budget reflects those actions that we have to take in order to implement our strategy. And I really believe that there was too much of an issue where the commissioners were not given enough time to be involved in the process from the start. So one of the first things that I did when I was in my first year in office is make them more part of the budget process. And so it was a more iterative process to arrive at a conclusion where we could, I believe we could get the 3 votes that we needed to. Second thing is that I'm pretty relaxed. I have the benefit of years. All right, I'm certainly in the autumn of my years, and so I've seen a lot in my lifetime. And I've kind of come to my point of view here. I've been blessed to have some people in my background that have given me an idea of what it takes for the chemistry to work. And I remember one of the courses that I first took when I got elected to office was on ethics. And the issue was, I don't think the instructor ever talked about ethics the whole time, the whole 2 days. He talked about the chemistry of people and how it is that you want to have your peers and your subordinates work with you, and you don't put them in a situation where they find their ethics and their values challenged. You know, you think about how they arrive at a decision, and you try to integrate that into an overall process so that you arrive at something that I call a consensus. And it's been, I think, pretty successful. You have to have a lot of patience with it. You have to know when to hold them and when to fold them. There are some times that something's ready for prime time and sometimes they're not. Sometimes things come to agenda preparation and I believe they're ready for it. And yet in the course of the discussion with the commissioners, I find that's not the case. And I think that you've seen, at least those who watch the board meetings, that I am very respectful of all the commissioners. They deserve my respect because they were elected. And for those who've never had to run for election in the political arena, you understand why I have to give them the grace and dignity they do. They deserve it, they earn it. And I try to do that because there's nothing to be achieved by having bad blood in a course of discussion. You have to agree to disagree. And even on those occasions when I don't have the consensus on my side, I learned to roll with it because I believe that you have to go with the will of the board. And I hope that in my time in office, people have seen that I'm willing to give that latitude to them because I respect them. And I know that deep down inside, we all have the best interests of all the people in the county at heart.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we're going to move on to our second question. We appreciate that. And we'll go first with you, Mr. Boyce, for this one. The second question is, what are the most pressing issues that Cobb County faces during and post-COVID, and what are your plans?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And probably certainly one of the more pressing issues right now we have. Actually, there's multiple issues and they're kind of run in parallel. One of them, of course, is we have to get through this pandemic. There's no question about it. That is overseeing and influencing everything we're doing right now. And I'm really pleased to see that we're finding a way to accommodate this, but we can't get complacent about this. Every time I go to a forum or when I talk on my weekly newsletter, I emphasize the 3 W's. We have to wear a mask, we have to watch our distance, we have to wash our hands. So the pandemic is certainly probably first among equals. The second thing, there's no doubt about it, we have some issues right now involving social injustices throughout the community that quite honestly, I just find a little distressing. I know we went through a lot of this in my Marine Corps. My closing comments will address that. I find myself having to go back in time to address issues that I thought in my previous career we had found a way to address, but clearly not in overall society. So we have to be dealing with those. We got to be very open about that. And I'm very pleased that next week the board is going to be bringing back to life a board that we previously removed because there wasn't enough action on it. Bring it back in a different way to start showing people this is the first step of many, because this is the generational issues we're going to have to address. We will not address these issues of social injustices overnight, next year, or in 10 years. We have to put things in place here in our government that show people that we don't just talk the talk, but we walk the walk. And then for the bigger picture, we're a county going to 1 million people in 2050. That's not my numbers. That's the Atlanta Regional Commissioners. We need to start thinking like a county that's going to 1 million people, which is why in 2022, I've been emphasizing we need to start looking at a referendum to discuss mobility issues that reflect the county of 1 million people. So those are the 3 priorities I'm looking at here in 2021.
Thank you so much. Ms. Cupid, what are the most pressing issues that Cobb County faces during and post-COVID, and what are your plans?
Thank you for that question. The first thing is to recognize when you mentioned the word COVID is that we are in a health pandemic, which means that there should be significance placed on the priority of recognizing that everything flows from our response to a health pandemic. In the earlier days of this pandemic, we chose not to do so, not necessarily locally or only locally, but as a state, which I think impeded us from being able to get on top of where this pandemic has brought us. There was such an interest in keeping things normal that we seem to never be able to get back to normal. And I think one of the ways that we combat that is by listening to our health professionals first and letting them help us guide policy and how we address other matters of the county. We've emphasized a lot of other things, and we put more investment in keeping things normal than we have in addressing the health crisis. And I think that's something that we should really take a better look at to see how we allow this county to respond to the crisis is not by addressing everything under the crisis, but asking those 5 whys. Why are we having these challenges economically? Why are people or our children unable to go to school? And when you start peeling back the layers of it, you realize it has to do with a health pandemic. So I think that needs to be addressed first. Second, I think that matters of governance need to be addressed on this board quickly to be able to address matters of equity external to the county. Matters of governance refer to how we are engaging all of our commissioners to be able to have an influence on the outcome of board decisions. Over the 8 years that I've been here, that has ebbed and flowed, but has not resulted in there being consistent influence of commissioners to impact their communities or to impact areas that they may be assigned to by way of agencies. And I think in order for everyone to be included at the table, we can't let the community, we can't ignore the inequity in the community without addressing the inequity that's within the county. And I think we need to see ourselves as partners in the county, not just as a board, but also with our staff, and see that we're all in this together. But lastly, equity is a big matter that needs to be addressed broadly. And I think that the issues of inequity have led to the issues of social injustice that the chairman has talked about, but it also leads to health injustice or health inequity. When we look at the impact of COVID, if you look at how our communities are developed, the access to healthcare, to parks, to be able to walk there safely, they're communities that have health inequities because of lack of access. When we look at transportation, there are transportation and mobility inequities because of where the county has prioritized funding. We look at educational inequities, and that's based off of decisions that our board makes when we decide to develop communities around our schools in a certain way that may not be able to uplift all communities so that their school can be a strong asset in their communities. And so we can emphasize performance and excellence of all of our communities. So I think first we should address COVID squarely on its face as a health pandemic. Two, to address governance so that we have clear policies that allow all of our leaders to engage. And third, address inequity that's not only inside the county, but in our communities.
Thank you so much. And as a nurse, I want to personally say I appreciate both of your thoughts, having been working throughout this entire pandemic. All of those issues are very important. And when we talk about those social determinants of health in terms of where we live, work, and play, we do have a lot of things that we need to consider in the midst of COVID. So thank you so much for both of your thoughtful answers. With that, we're going to go to question 3, and we'll allow Ms. Cupid to lead for this one. What are your thoughts on expanding MARTA into Cobb County, and what plans do you have to move that effort forward?
Thank you. It may be a surprise to some of you who are here, but MARTA is already in Cobb County. MARTA connects to our Cumberland area by way of Route 10, and it also connects to the Six Flags area, connecting into Route 30. And so when people ask about MARTA being in Cobb, the reality is that it's here. Now, can we do more to expand a regional transit system? Most certainly. And I've worked to help to create the possibility of that occurring. There was the House bill that was passed to create a regional transit system so that we can have all of our counties integrated into having a robust transit system across all of our metro Atlanta counties. Cobb chose to be an outlier, and instead of fully participating in the ATL, there were efforts, including efforts on our board, to just carve out specific areas of Cobb County so that all of Cobb County could not play in the progress of transit here. And with that, there were also efforts to move a referendum on this board, instead of being considered in an even calendar year, to be considered in an odd calendar year, despite the county spending thousands of dollars to assess that if we were to have a successful referendum on transit, it would need to be on an even calendar year. I persistently and consistently spoke out against those efforts, which were going to diminish Cobb County's ability to be part of a robust metro Atlanta-wide system by first making sure that all of Cobb County has the ability to play in the movement of transit in the county. Because to me, to have it in just one area means that you're segregating opportunities into just one area of the county, and you're making it seem as if transit is not an aspect of transportation that uplifts the entire county. Two, if we recognize that transit is a significant element of Cobb County's progress, then it's incumbent upon us as the Board of Commissioners to ensure its success. And I think it takes our leader, which did not occur in this case, in saying we will not put forward initiatives that undermine the data that shows us for us to be successful and not go by the way of Gwinnett, that we need to have this in an even calendar year. And I personally pushed forward. And when there were arguments about the cost of a referendum in an odd calendar year, you also saw the momentum of that change. When it comes to mobility, I will not lag, I will lead when it comes to that, because not only are we leaving people behind who are transit dependent, but we are leaving transit opportunity behind when you look at economic development that is being attracted to having access to transit. So you're seeing opportunities which should be coming to Cobb. They are bypassing us because we cannot readily come to the table and say Cobb County is a player. And if I were to lead in Cobb, I would not be leading from behind. I would be leading up forward and saying, yes, we have opportunity in Cobb County to make sure we have a robust transit system. That doesn't mean transit and buses go everywhere. You have to look specifically to where it makes sense. So there's not just a one size fits all when it comes to transit, but we should not be leaving money and opportunities on the table, especially considering the level of dependency that's out there, but the level of partnership that we can have when we come together to bring forward a robust transit system in Cobb.
Thank you so much. Mr. Boyce, what are your thoughts on expanding MARTA into Cobb County, and what plans do you have to move that effort forward?
Well, I agree with what the commissioner said about MARTA. MARTA's already here. We've had connectivity with MARTA for a long time. But the larger issue isn't MARTA. The larger issue is mobility, which is why it was so important that in my first year in office, that the board passed the $850,000 transit study, so we could finally take a look at what, do a survey of what people really thought about transit in Cobb County. And the beauty of this study was it finally did away with mythology that MARTA isn't popular in Cobb County. And that's what people, they were hanging their hat on for a long time. It was an opinion, but it was in fact. Why is that? Because we're a county of 760,000 people right now. People are moving here from different parts of the country because they want to come to Cobb to live. And with them, they bring new ideas, and with them, they bring past experiences of how they use transit. So the study clearly showed that MARTA has a positive reputation in the county, and that they're willing to consider other options involving transit. Now, the big issue, of course, it's all well and good that you support it right up to the time we ask you to pay for it, all right? Which is why I've been very emphatic for well over a year now of why we needed to do this mobility referendum. And of course, the challenge when you do that is that once again, you get people running out there saying that, well, there he goes again. He's going to ask for another tax. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot be a five-star county unless you have a five-star budget that reflects the realities of this county going to 1 million people. We need to be taking a hard look at what our transit and mobility issues here in the county. And it's not just transit, it's also transportation. So the state has given us two weapons with House Bill 930, which allows us, I believe, for the transit part, and House Bill 170 for transportation part. And they give us different ways to fund these using fractional sales taxes, which is really a huge plus. So we have all the right ingredients, but what we have to do right now is that we're coming out of a pandemic, and people are very careful right now because they've been hurt, or even if they haven't lost their jobs, they might have been, concerned they might have. So they're going to be very, very careful about doing something that might ask them to do more stuff with their money in the future. It's going to require a real leader to lead us into a referendum in 2 years, coming out of a pandemic where so many people have been furloughed or lost their jobs. And I think I've shown in my time here that I've been willing to step up to the plate and speak the truth. If this is what you want, this is what it's going to cost, and I'm asking you to support that. And we're still, we have some underlying programs going on here as we do the studies that are going to bring out the projects that we believe are hearing from the people that we think they're going to want to do in referendum in 2022. But it's going to be a three-part process. We're going to do these town halls and these virtual town halls and surveys to identify the projects. We're going to come back to them and vet them with the voters to make sure that we understand this is what they wanted. And then we're going to come back to them and say, this is the cost of those projects. Do you support it? Because it doesn't do any good to do all this work to have it lose in a referendum in 2022. And I believe that I've shown people that I'm willing to step up, all right, into this headwind that's going to require us to address very directly to people. If this is the future of what the county wants to look like, then this is what it's going to require from you. And I plan to carry that message forward into the future. The last thing I want to say here is I think it's very important to remember that every year since I've been in office, I have supported a budget of $16 to $20 million, depending on the year, to underlie our Cobb Link system. Because as we all know, there isn't a single transit system that I know of in Georgia, certainly not in the metro area, that can pay for itself. So I've been very upfront that every one of my budgets has been there to support this transit system because it provides transportation for the very people who need it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for your answers. We're going to go ahead on to our next question. And Mr. Boyce, we'll start with you on this one. How do you plan to address the affordable housing issue in Cobb County?
Yeah, we are already doing that in some format. Why is that? Look, I'm a public servant, all right? I'm a government worker. I say that with all pride, all right? I'm also a product of Washington. And I was one of those guys that, when I was a young officer that sat in a cubicle that executed, government plans and provided guidance and did funding. There are people in Washington whose sole job is to take a $4.2 trillion national budget and allocate the funds back to the people down to the state or local level. We have programs right now in this county that we have used in partnership with local banks to get county employees funding for their down payments on their homes, right? Because the biggest issue for most people is the mortgage payment. It's the closing costs. And we've had a lot of success. Last count I heard was probably about 40, but that was about 6 months ago because that's the last time I focused on this number. But I'm sure it's more because every time we have new hire orientation, I emphasize this program that if you're a new hire in Cobb County and you have never owned a home before, we have ways to get money to you so you can buy a home. So we already have resources to do that. I've been pushing it to community activists out in the county. The problem we're having right now is that we don't have the infrastructure to push this, to expand this program into a bigger theater where more people have information about that. So I know there are people who believe that it is a role of government to provide funding for affordable housing issues. We have programs like that already. Use the Mary Housing Authority to the Cobb Housing Authority. Is it enough? No, it's not. But it is bigger than people realize, but it is not where we want it to be. But I also know that programs like this are not simple. They're complicated. You got to have the right staff. You have to have the right experience, and you have the right amount of funding to make these kind of programs efficient and effective. And we're not there right now because that would require additional revenue from this county to do that. And as we all know, this is a very conservative board. Maybe the new board that's going to come into play in 2021 will be more amenable to programs like this. But certainly, I've shown my interest in these programs. And I look forward to working with a new board if this is the direction they want to take.
Thank you so much. Ms. Cupid, how do you plan to address the affordable housing issue in Cobb County?
Thank you for asking. And I think it's important to realize just how comprehensive and nuanced of an issue this is. And the chairman did recognize that we do have some distinct programs to address affordable housing for employees, but addressing that for 40 employees certainly doesn't begin to recognize the full scope of those challenges countywide. Our Marietta Housing Authority has had some projects which have addressed that, But one thing, being a commissioner in District 4, which has the dominance of affordable housing in the county, is that when you have efforts that congregate the most affordable housing in certain areas of the county, it stifles that ability of the county, of those parts of the county, to be complete communities that have amenities that people expect to be by where they live, whether it's a bank, whether it's a grocery store, a dry cleaner, amenities or recreational activities for their children. Those tend to follow area median income. And so I think it's important that we don't just look at addressing affordable housing just by looking at housing singularly. We have to look at it as part of an entire system of how development occurs in the county. So looking at it from that perspective, I think what's overdue is for us to take a comprehensive look about how our housing prices impact the development around it, and how affordable housing, if it's introduced, what does that do to how that community develops? And what's desirable at the end of the day is to ensure that as we introduce affordable housing into the county, that is done in a way that does not burden any particular area. And that's very important to the Black community, because we tend to live in areas that are more moderate in income. And a lot of times we have the communities where affordable housing is introduced because land values may be less. And while you're introducing those opportunities in those communities, we have challenges because we don't look at what the impact that has on our home equity. You know, housing is the #1 investment tool for all Americans. That's really part of our American dream, is to have that home and realize the economic return from our homes. But for so many communities of color, they take on that burden of addressing the social challenges of a county or a community where their home equity is not necessarily looked at as part of the equation and how affordable housing is addressed. So we've had some challenges in the district where we've had affordable housing introduced, and our more stable Black communities have said, yes, we think this should be considered, but this should be considered for all of Cobb. All of Cobb needs to share this burden into how we address development. Another thing is, when we talk about development, even though the county can incentivize it, there are nonprofit and for-profit players that actually develop properties. So while we can come up with programs, you know, for it to be successful, we can't do it in a siloed manner. We need to get developers together. We need to get those nonprofit organizations together to figure out what are all of the ways that we can address affordable housing. Yes, one, where we can have the money to back it and understand the programs that are provided nationally, but also 3, how do we make sure that it doesn't have a disparate impact in the communities that we are trying to assist with affordable housing? You know, one thing that people may not know is that, you know, school performance is correlated with income. I'm not saying it's caused by income levels, but it's correlated. And so if you look at trying to share those affordable housing opportunities in the areas that may have maybe better along than some other areas, you allow those areas to also not be as impacted as other communities that are challenged. And you allow those students to also be exposed to other opportunities that they just can't be exposed to if they are in areas that not only have issues of affordable housing, but where there's affordable housing needs, you might see other social needs that need to be addressed. So I think the county needs to be looking at this from a broader perspective. They need to be looking at it from a varied perspective with our nonprofit leaders at the table, with our for-profit developers at the table, and looking at it comprehensively, not just from a bricks and mortar perspective, but what is it going to do in impacting home equity investment of those living in a community and the social fabric of communities.
Thank you so much. So we've had some previous questions that probably will segue. Our previous questions will probably segue into what will probably be our final question prior to your closing statements. And we're going to keep it keep it even. So we're going to start with this question with Ms. Cupid. How will you champion and address racial, income, education, and healthcare disparities in Cobb County? That is a mouthful.
That is a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a big question. Yeah.
You know, not just by way of being a person of color, but in leading an area that is one of the most diverse communities in Cobb County. This is something that I do every day in representing those where I live. They expect their voices to be considered in the development of policy, in the investment of our dollars, in the interest of our leaders within the county. And too often, you see those voices not being able to be at the table. And I will say firsthand that when you exclude Black leaders from leading on issues that impact the Black community, you are dismissing the voice of the Black community. And so I think it's very important to recognize that when we have leaders that come out of those areas that are elected by them, that we are to recognize that they are a voice for those areas and to at least work with those leaders. Because when we choose to exclude them, we're making a broader statement than what we realize. When we choose to go over them, we end up doing the same thing that our communities are concerned about, people going over them and doing things for them instead of with them. And that is not whatever, that's not the stereotypical construct that we want placed on us as a community, as African Americans. We want the opportunity to be able to create our outcomes. But so often you see us not being able to be considered with seriousness at the table. So how do we address that? It's bigger than just dealing with persons, but I think it's very important to look at it from a policy impact perspective. And one of the best ways I can think to do so is to look at how we do things through a lens of equity. Equity doesn't mean that we do things equally, but we look at the broader equal impact that we want to have and look at the different ways that different areas, based on their nuances, we look at how they have to be addressed, perhaps uniquely, to bring everyone up to the same standard or to get everyone to the same goal. So if you look at policing, we can look at, yes, it's important to provide police that are in the community and that are involved. But it's also important to break that down and look beyond that and look at the numbers. Are certain communities impacted differently? And are those communities of color? Do we have the same outcome that we expect on people of certain racial demographic? And you can look at that data by racial demographic to make sure that we are not having disparate or disproportionate burden on some communities over others. When it comes to COVID response, there was such an unwillingness at first to even articulate the fact that there are communities that are having a different outcome than others. But when you look at that data and you look at it through a lens of equity, you can say, even though our county or our country is facing a national health pandemic, looking at the data, we can see certain zip codes that have people of color, or looking at it racially, certain demographics are coming in with diagnoses of coronavirus, or certain communities are dying, and looking at how we address those differently. So one of the things that I did in talking to Wellstar is to see how can we do many events in those areas where people are unlikely to tap into the main model that we have, people driving out to Jim Miller Park for testing. When it comes to education, one thing that we did not take seriously as a board as a whole, even though I advocated for it, was for us to look at how going virtual would have a disparate impact on communities of color if we did not make sure that they had the proper technical infrastructure in place. So even though the board decided to move forward with an $8.1 million software system, we should have done more to make sure that no community was being left behind from having a device. We should have done more to make sure every community in our county had Wi-Fi access. And that takes looking at the data through a lens of equity. And that is something that I would champion as a board, to make sure that, yes, we can talk about the success of Cobb, but that success of Cobb should be shared by all of Cobb. And the way you do that is by breaking down the evaluation of what success looks like by looking at metrics. And again, looking at it from a community perspective and also looking at it from a demographic perspective.
Thank you so much. Mr. Boyce, how will you champion and address racial, income, education, and healthcare disparities in Cobb County?
You know, I kind of guessed this question was going to be coming. And I think the important thing that I want to emphasize, and I've given this a lot of thought, there's no way I can provide an answer through the lens of a Black person. All right, I'm not a Black person. I can only respond to you through the lens of my experience, which is, based on one that has had some issues involving prejudice and bigotry, but nothing ever that will match the history of the Black experience in America. I can only come at it from the perspective of really two ways. First of all, my faith walk, and second of all, my experience coming up through a system that, when I entered the Marine Corps in the 1970s, certainly had racism underlying a large part of how we did business, and certainly how we selected our leadership and how we worked through that. So when I made my comments earlier about a generational approach, I really mean that. We know what the problems are here. What we need to have are the people that are going to finally act on it. And I think that's the problem we've had here in Cobb County, is that we've always sort of just, well, look what we're doing here, and we can point to certain things and mark that as a sign of progress. But in fact, it never dealt with the underlying fundamental issues of how we approach people. And it's all about relationships. So I can only answer your question based on how I think we need to address these problems. The first thing is, and I'm sorry we have lost this in America, but we really need to get back to this fundamental approach. They are all children of God. We are all made in his image. And somehow we have, in our history in America, professed that, but then made exceptions to it. And that's how we got where we are. We need to either believe in that fundamental principle or we don't. Because if we don't, then we need to address that problem. And I've done everything I possibly can in my lifetime, all right, and certainly my time in the board, to let people know that there are certain practices that we've had here in the county that are absolutely unacceptable. All right. They are practices and that we have had here that led us to leadership issues where, yes, we have probably done a great job in breaking the glass ceiling involving gender issues, but we're just now starting to find some success in the racial issues and also the ethnic issues. And that's absolutely unacceptable, because I came from an institution where we addressed all these things. All right. We didn't fix all of them, but we certainly put processes in place that made it very clear to people that we're only going to look at people in one way, and that's with equity. All right. We're all going to be valued on the same, we're all going to be graded on the same values. So that's the first thing we have to do here. And we are way behind on that right now. Fortunately, we have a county manager in Dr. McMorris, who's going to be able to bring her background as an educator, and her background in the Black experience to the board and to the county to help us shape something where we've made great starts, but we have a long way to go. And we have to acknowledge that even though we've made progress, we still have a long way to go. I think that the beauty of Cobb County is that once we engage more often with each other, we come to understand with each other that we're just fundamentally just people. We're all the same. We all have the same aspirations. We want to take care of our families. We want to have a decent job. We want to have hope in tomorrow. And we have to do our part in government to show that when you come here, at least from the government side, this is what we stand for, and this is what we're going to do whatever we can to make that happen. I think the government, the county, has done a remarkable job at identifying those issues involving the Black community and the Hispanic community involving the COVID. Did we get there fast enough? Probably not. But, you know, the big issue for us initially wasn't that we didn't want to help them. We simply couldn't get the test kits to do it. All right. And we had a lot of other issues on a logistical side. But here we are now, where I have a weekly discussion with Wellstar, and they have a health equity program there that's second to none. So we're making progress, maybe in silos, but I think we all know we're working to the same common good. We have to also understand that government isn't the solution to everything. And when you drop it in the lap of government to solve all your problems, you're going to be disappointed. When government creates expectations that cannot be met, you're being unfair to that very citizen by giving those expectations, thinking you can solve the problem. So what is the balance there? Well, all I can say is that based on my background, is that you have to engage them in the way that I've been doing it. I don't think anybody has had more town halls, more forums than I've had, trying to get feedback from the people to understand what their issues are here. And that involves all members of the community. So that's what I'm looking at here. I realize it's a big task, but I think I'm up to it because I've had experience in it. And by working together, we're going to achieve a better today because we believe in it, because that's the aspiration of America, that we truly are, we the people.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank both of you for such engaging and informative discussion this evening. You will both now have the opportunity for closing statements. We do ask that you keep those at 3 minutes, if possible. And we started with Ms. Cupid, so we're going to let Mr. Boyce give his closing statement first.
Sure. Well, first of all, Lori, I want to thank you for moderating this. I also want to thank you for being one of the heroes of Cobb County as a nurse. I don't know how, you every day you have to go in there and you take your life in your hands. I know you have a lot of precautions, but it still takes courage. So to you and your colleagues, thank you for all you've done for all of us here in the county. I would also thank you for hosting the forum here, and also Leroy, if I don't see him again. But just like to say, my pastor, I go to Mount Bethel United Methodist Church, and my pastor this Sunday made an interesting comment that God gives us challenges that are bigger than we are. Think about that. He gives us challenges stronger, bigger than we are. Certainly many believe that such situations are attention getters. Perhaps it's his way, the Lord's way of showing that we need him in our lives to do the impossible. Others may not have a faith walk, and they might look at it from the point of view of the need to be part of a team to meet the big challenges. But regardless, leaders are needed, both aspirational and experiential ones that have led the way in overcoming seemingly impossible challenges. I always knew that 2020 was going to be a very difficult year for me and test me as a leader. It was putting the county budget together, which is always a fun time with the board. There was the renewal of the SPLOST. There was the primary in June. And again, as I knew, and Commissioner Kibb was very gracious early in this program to let me know that she was going to be running for chairman. I really appreciate that show of respect and dignity. And that shows the kind of person that the commissioner is. So it's been an interesting year, but someone once told me that leadership is being able to see the consequences of your actions farther in the future than those around you. So while I never foresaw the pandemic, I knew that when I came into office that I had to rebuild the county's fiscal foundation in order to address any unforeseen disasters that we might encounter. We would need a sizable fund balance to address that. And the road to where we are today has been a rocky one, but I was steadfast in my convictions and in my actions to achieve that end. So while some may argue that luck played a role in that, I would assert that you create conditions where you can optimize your luck. We were fortunate that the federal government provided us $132 million to address some of the adverse impact of the pandemic. But the relationships that I have forged with the members of the board, the medical and healthcare communities, the chamber and businesses, Cobb Travel and Tourism, the county school systems, the mayors, the faith-based communities, and the civic and private organizations all have borne fruit as I work to provide funding for a wide universe of people in need. Added to the pandemic this summer was a civil unrest resulting from the continued injustices on too many American citizens. Perhaps the greatest achievement of my generation of Marines was not our military campaigns, but those of us who stayed in after Vietnam and took on the issues of racial and gender discrimination. That I was able to retire in a community of military that had flag rank officers represented by women, Blacks, Hispanics, attest to the fact that leadership starts at the top. I've seen what needs to be done to displace bigotry, prejudice, and hatred in the workforce. And my record of board appointments and actions in the community is one that clearly reflects this experience of tolerance and diversity. As I waited today at an intersection for cars to pass so I could pull out onto the road, I cannot help but realize that Cobb is coming back to life. We have found a way to work together through a challenge that was bigger than us. I never doubted for a second we would come out of this challenge bigger and stronger. It's been my awesome part to have had a role in this. And for that reason, I'm asking people I'm asking for their vote in November to be reelected as the chairman of Cobb County. Thank you very much for your time and your opportunity to address you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Ms. Cupid, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. Again, it's been an honor to have served on the Board of Commissioners for that past 8 years. And the most prized contribution, really all that I can contribute to this county is service. That is why I'm here. You know, politics and running for office, I've learned, is really a means to be able to serve communities and to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to achieve their best. And the way that I have found to do that is through serving. Before coming on the Board of Commissioners, I was an engineer who saw something that was challenged in my community and decided to serve on my HOA. And I served on a community task force. And people started asking me for opportunities to see how I could work with them to help serve disparate areas in Cobb. I've had great opportunities to transition from being an engineer to working as an executive assistant with the Regional Business Coalition, which is an umbrella organization for 14 chambers of commerce here in the metro area. I was given the opportunity to come and work for a commission for New Georgia, for the state of Georgia. And through those connections, I asked those to come help me serve my community. And so I was able to bring leaders here, and they've helped me to consider myself as someone who can serve, not just as a community advocate, but as a change agent who's able to affect outcomes by being a decision maker. Really, when we're asking you for your support in any elected office, we're asking you for your help to be a decision maker in the outcome of our county. And I believe that I've proven myself to be a principled, pragmatic, and people-oriented decision maker. Yes, for District 4, because we've had our challenges, but really the goals and ideas that this community has had is one that all of our communities have. The interests of Cobb are the same: to live in a safe, to live in a vibrant community. And my role here today is to serve and to make sure that that vision extends to everyone here in Cobb. And it's one thing to speak about that aspirationally, and it's another thing to make sure that you're doing the work to make sure that happens. And the chair has such a significant capability of ensuring that our policies and programs reach everyone by how we serve. I would not be running here today for chair if I saw the way that our community was being led, was able to reach everyone and helping us reach the goal of being able to achieve our best here in Cobb. I'm running because I believe that we can make sure that instead of following political ideology or to serving just personalities, that we are serving all people who are here in Cobb and who bought into the vision of what we thought Cobb would return to us. We all want great schools. We all want successful businesses. We all want safe communities. But it's not one thing to talk about it. You've got to be about it. And that sometimes means making the tough decisions. But one of the best ways that I believe that we do that is by doing things in a principled manner. No, nobody expected COVID. Even though as a Black community, we saw things that were disparate from a policing perspective. But I don't think many of us foresaw what would take place this year. But I believe that when you stick to principle, that transcends circumstance and it transcends fact. And if we have a principled way of leading that includes everyone, not just as a goal, but in the decisions that we make day by day and how we treat people and bring to the table, we have the ability to get through COVID. We have the ability to get through social inequity. We have the ability to address the economic disparity that we see within our county. But we have got to be committed, not just in rhetoric, but in action. My actions over the past 8 years have demonstrated that I believe in partnership and bringing everyone to the table. And I cannot do this alone. That partnership includes you. So I'm asking you to please come to the table with me and electing a chair that's going to make sure everyone in Cobb County has the ability to achieve their best and brightest days here in our county. I'm asking you to choose me, not because I'm asking you to choose the best darn political leader. I'm asking you to choose someone who has always been committed towards serving the interest of everyone here, because it's time to do something different. We can't do business as usual. It's time to put people first who lead by putting others first. And I believe that I'm the commissioner to do so as chair in Cobb County. And again, not just one speaking aspirationally, but one with 8 years of experience in doing so. So I thank you for this time today. I thank you for the ability to give you my best self over the past 8 years. I'm asking you to help me grow in my service to Cobb County over the next 4 years as Cobb County Chair. And please, I need your help. Please go vote in November and encourage others to vote for Lisa Cupid for Cobb County Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for sharing your time, your platforms, and your opinions this evening. And on behalf of the Marietta Roswell Alumni Chapter, we are grateful to serve as the host this evening. And I want to personally, again, thank Leroy and the Alliance for allowing me to moderate as well. And on a more of a personal note, both as an African-American woman and as a veteran, I am a 30-year veteran. I appreciate your insight, your thoughtfulness, and your ideas, and your willingness to come and share those with us this evening. We encourage you to request your absentee ballot. We ask you that if you're not registered to vote, you can do it online. We also want to make sure that you are still on the voter rolls by checking your voter status. And I'm going to turn this over to Leroy, and thank you again.
Wow. An incredible night, a lot of great information. Clearly an opportunity. First of all, Lori, you hear me clear?
I can hear you.
Okay, just good stuff. Thank you both. At the end of the day, we've all been on 1,000 Zooms today. To have you here and give everything that you have, we really, really appreciate it. I think you both will agree with me on one point, and I'm going to go ahead and share back my screen for the few minutes I have left with everybody. First of all, we need to make sure that every vote counts. Every vote counts. I have it in screen view so I can see nodding heads everywhere that every vote needs to count. Second of all, we are real fortunate to have 17 organizations affiliated with us. We represent 5,000 households collectively. We touch probably 85% of the African-American voting population in Cobb County, but those are just stats. We need folks to join in and help in the efforts that a lot of these organizations are doing, and we're doing as a whole to empower folks to vote. Whether it's being a monitor at one of the poll stations, whether it's doing things to get additional folks registered, There are 1,000 ways that you can help out. One of the ways we can know that you're out there, if you're a member of our organization or not a member of our organization, if you go to facebook.com/Cobb Community Alliance, there is a registration link. Give us your general information and we will get out to you with all the many, many ways that folks are coming to us to partner to make sure that we get all votes counted and all stations working accurately. But I can't thank you enough, commissioners, for your time this evening, your emphasis. I do ask this last question every time, so I'm going to go ahead and do this right now. Lisa, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. If folks wanted to reach out to you beyond this, we're a bridge to information. We're not a gate.
Okay, sure.
So how do they get to your campaign website and how do they get to you? Could you share that
Thank
information?
you. Certainly I can. At cupidforcobb.com, that's www.cupidforcobb.com. You can also find me on Facebook and on Instagram at either Lisa Cupid or at Cupid for Cobb. Finally, you can reach me by email. I'm at lisa@cupidforcobb.com. That's lisa@cupidforcobb.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, could you answer the same question, how folks could reach out to you, get more information about what you're doing and what your plans are?
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate that. Thanks, Leroy. My website is likemike4Cobb.com. You can reach me at likemikeforcobb@gmail.com. And obviously you can also reach me on Facebook. We have Facebook and Instagram at likemikeforcobb. And my campaign phone number is 678-628-8501.
All right, and the last thing I'd like to share before we close tonight and everyone leaves us, thank you for listening in tonight, is stay tuned next week. I think, again, Lisa and Mike also have an interest in next week as well.
Yes.
District 2 represents East Cobb and also represents the Brave Stadium. So we have 2 new candidates, both of them new, that will be vying to be the commissioner for District 2. So whether you live in East Cobb or whether you attend the Braves Stadium area, you have an interest, tune in. Again, I also want to thank my moderator. Thank you so much, Lori.
Good job.
We're going to close for the night. I'm going to ask my panel and moderator to stay on. But thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you again next week. Again, one last time, the voter engagement activities 2020 on the Cobb Community Alliance Facebook page is where you could register to volunteer for many of the activities that are coming our way. We appreciate you and thank you and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.